Astorino is the Republican Westchester County executive. He is widely considered a rising star in the party, and he joins us now from New York City. How are you?
How are you, Liz? I'm good.
Well.
How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us. So
No
I
problem.
have
Thanks
to
for the invite.
ask, you are, as I said, a rising star. You're sort of a bright spot in the party right now. The party came in very strong to this year, both in New York and nationally, and now, not so much. What's your assessment?
On what, overall statewide races, or the party nationally, or?
Yeah, well, let's start with New York, and why is it that the state just can't really seem to get its footing? You have this primary that's turning kind of ugly between Rick Lazio and Carl Palladino, and then there are these 4 open seats that the state Senate wasn't expecting to have to defend.
Well, I think, first of all, we need to get back to being the party of ideas, which I think are, and I think now we're getting a fair shake from voters. They want to hear what we have to say. Once you win, then you have to go from campaigning to governing, and that's what we're doing. And so we're making some difficult choices, which I think we're trying to treat everybody like adults. We're trying to say this is what it looks like now. And I think that's a good thing for the party because it's not just slashing. What we're trying to do is be reasonable. We're trying to be responsible. We're having dialogues with every group. And one of the things that I said at the New York State Convention, it's so important for our party because, you know, maybe it's been tarnished by the images of the past, whether it's nationally or in the state. But I think we've got to get back to our roots. We've got to go to areas where Republicans just have not traveled in the past, to be very honest with you. And we cannot expect different demographic blocks or different people to vote Republican if we haven't had a conversation with them. And so that, I think, is very, very important. We're very similar in a lot of different ways. No matter what neighborhood I went into last year when I was running for county executive, the conversation was very similar. Taxes are driving people out. People want a good education system, no matter whether they're in suburbia or in urban areas. It didn't matter. People want the best for their kids. And so these are the conversations we've had to have. And I think if we talk about them and not be afraid to talk about them, I think it'll be good for Republican candidates.
Okay, but you had a support. You ran with support of Ed Cox. Is that correct? When you ran
Yes.
and beat Andy Spano. Now
Right.
there are people who question his leadership of the party. He tried to prevent a primary by bringing in, well, create a primary against Rick Lazio, who ended up the designee, by bringing in a former Democrat. I mean, and then now all of these tactics have resulted in a dramatically underfunded candidate who's the designee of the party, Rick Lazio, against a guy who is self-funding, Carl Palladino, and then Andrew Cuomo, who has more than $23 million on hand. You ran as an underfunded candidate as well.
Right.
And managed to make that work. So do you believe that, in fact, it's still possible for Rick Lazio to make it work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're almost at the same juncture that I was at last year with the candidates this year. I mean, it comes down to message. Obviously, you have to raise money, and I think Rick is out there doing that. You know, a lot of times the media doesn't focus on these races until the fall. Unfortunately, there is a primary coming up, and so they really do need to start focusing on where the candidates stand. But I think Rick is out there doing his best. I met with him just 2 weeks ago, and we're going to do some things in Westchester. He's right on the message, and I think that's important. Hopefully people are hearing it, although this is the time of the year, quite frankly, where a lot of people go away and they tune things out. So the message has to be loud and clear. I think he's got the right message. I think the party has the right message. But we're approaching a primary where people are going to have about a week after Labor Day when they're really going to focus, if they're a Republican, on who to vote for, and then 6 weeks to get a message out. Is it an uphill battle? Of course it is, even with the registration and the money disadvantage. But can it be done? Of course it can. I did it, and I think that's what other candidates have to look at. If we could do it in deep blue Westchester County, we could do it anywhere in New York State.
Okay, but you know what's interesting also is just recently we saw Andrew Cuomo in your neck of the woods. He was down in the suburbs. I'm not sure that he was in Westchester County. I know he was in Putnam. And he was talking about a property tax cap, which was this really big issue that suburban Republicans were pushing and that Republican Senate was pushing when they were in the majority. And instead we're seeing Rick Lazio and Carl Palladino hung up on this issue of the mosque, this mosque proposed for Ground Zero. What's your feeling? Do you think that they are focused correctly here? Because Andrew Cuomo is sort of co-opting the message of the Republicans almost and reaching across the aisle and getting a lot of these guys endorsing him, local Republicans endorsing him as he travels around the state.
Yeah, I think the message has to be very clear, and all we should be talking about right now, forget some of the other things, we should be talking about taxes and why the policies of the past, why the policies that are continuing this day with